We know better now, don't we? The devils don't come from hell beneath us, no. No, they come from the sky.
Those who have seen last year's Batman v Superman film may or may not have caught one of the famous lines of Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, describing his view of where mankind's enemy comes from. As he states, devils don't come from hell beneath us, no. No, they come from the sky, which seemed to be an invalid statement due to the centuries of society's understanding that hell and its inhabitants are physically or spiritually deep within the earth. Whether you enjoyed the film or not, screenwriter Chris Terrio and director Zack Snyder may be on to some form of truth regarding our enemy and their interactions with us. Let's take a quick look right after this. Warner Brothers have released new insight to their upcoming film, Justice League, a continuation of Batman v Superman, and we see that an individual by the name of Steppenwolf, Darkseid's general and uncle, will be the big bad for Darkseid's arrival. We see many shots of devils, also known as parademons, entering Earth's atmosphere, and even Steppenwolf himself arrive from above and not below. Biblical derivatives can be found all throughout Hollywood. Let's look at what Scripture states regarding devil's current and future domain. Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12 reads, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places." Principalities, powers, rulers of darkness are different ranks of angels who operate in order within our adversary's kingdom of darkness, who continually strike against us via the battle of the mind. They reside in the heavenly places. According to God's creation act in Genesis, He created 3 levels of the heavens, separated by the magnetized mirror-like glass firmament described in Job chapter 37 verse 18. The first of the heavenlies is the arch-vaporous skies. The second is the actual firmament, holding all the lights we observe above us. And the third is the realm of God, far above the farther sides of the north. Our enemy, the old cherub, and his ranks have access to all levels, which all come from above and not beneath us. Job chapter 1, verse 6 through 12 reads, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, 'From where do you come?' So Satan answered the Lord and said, 'From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it.' Then the Lord said to Satan, 'Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil?' So Satan answered the Lord and said, 'Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? Have you blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land? But now stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face.' And the Lord said to Satan, 'Behold, all that he has is in your power. Only do not lay a hand on his person.' So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord." This scripture confirms that our enemy does not work for God in any way, but can still access the realm of God, accusing the other 2/3 of angels that stands with God. And this scripture also shows us that our enemy is always out to prove to God that his crowning achievement, mankind, will blaspheme God if pushed hard enough. But of course, Job displays outstanding faith and long-suffering, proving God to be right as always, and our enemy waits for another opportunity. Revelation chapter 8 verse 10 through 11 reads, "Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the water, because it was made bitter. The great star that this verse is referring to is an angel who has indeed come from the sky. The name wormwood is the Greek word absinthos, which means bitterness, and it is translated into the English as wormwood. It is the name of the goddess of the sky and lies. Those who have bonded with absinthos are full of bitterness. Their sense of reality is so warped that they are unable to tell the truth. They are so afraid to be found out that if caught, they react with anger and bitterness. Those who are habitual liars have extreme ego problems. They exist in a constant state of confusion and are unable to resolve that which plagues them. This event takes place during the end of days of eschatology, similar to the destruction that Steppenwolf will bring to the earth. Lex Luthor's statement that devils don't come from hell beneath us, but from the sky, is exactly correct. However, in all reality, they will be sent to hell called Gehenna, the lake of fire, found in Matthew chapter 25, verse 41, which reads, "Then he will also say to those on the left hand, Depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels."
A clip out talks a little bit about satellites. Back in the old days, you will find clips on my channel where I was still assuming that satellite tracking applications were showing me a true thing. I later went back and began to logically deduce that satellites do not exist as they are described. We're going to go through old clips to new clips demonstrating what anyone who wants to go out and film coming through the center frame here will see. They're these little black round things for the most part. These clips that look like this were shot with my 8-inch Meade telescope from the 1990s and a Canon T2i. And we're going to run through a number of these through time up to the modern time. And you can tell this one's quite a bit closer, right? Of course it is. Actually, all these things are much closer than the average person thinks. This is shot with the full spectrum camera. It was shot with an 11-inch Celestron telescope. This is a Canon EOS 5D Mark III full spectrum camera. That black dot in the center is junk on the sensor. But what we're going to do here, I believe Croat shot this one. We're going to track off. If you look, you can catch him out there near middle frame. He's going in a perfectly straight line. It's the pan of the telescope. You'll see some white dots. Those are stars being picked up by the full spec camera. But a lot of people come and say, hey, I see satellites. And I say to them, no, what you are seeing is lights in the sky. Coming in at the bottom very slow. Tiny little guy down there. What they're looking at is lights. And recently I saw a satellite map that shows like a globe and how many satellites are supposedly around us. Many thousands. Depending on what you look at, you will find from 15 to 30,000 satellites, and that does not include the supposed space junk. I saw a good mathematician do a breakdown that if that was correct, we would expect to see from 1 to 500 satellites transit the moon every, I forget what it was, hour or 3 hours or whatever. Anyhow, a lot. What you're seeing here is many thousands of hours of filming, sometimes shooting a week or 2 weeks or more just to catch footage like this. If you're keeping your eye on the screen, you'll pick up the movement. Now, this is shot with a 12-inch Meade that I sent back because Meade does not make good telescopes, and this is with the Nikon D800E camera, 36 megapixels, so you can start to really see what megapixels do for you in the zoom and in the initial filming of an object. Anyhow, to get back to it, anyone who wants, this is back to the old equipment, anyone who wants to go out and spend endless hours filming, you will eventually film objects like this for the most part. There are other things that I have filmed, but 90-some% of everything you film transiting the moon will look like this. These do not look like satellites. These are much closer than we have been told. As I have covered in older clips, I had an optics expert break down 2 of the systems I used, the 8-inch and the 11-inch, with the ancillary cameras I was using. And if you do the math, if something like this would probably be claimed to be in half geosynchronous orbit, which is 11,000 miles. I forget how many pixels across this object is, but when you begin to calculate them, they would be absolutely enormous. So I can tell you two things based on many years of filming. This is predominantly what you will film transiting the moon. They are not satellites. They are much closer than even probably what we would call space at roughly 100 miles. And that's what you will find. So there it is, man. I would urge everyone, go out and get binoculars or whatever and watch the moon, and you will in fact find out this is what you film mostly. And you will begin to put together that these things are not satellites. Satellites do not exist as they are described, and certainly not in the numbers they are described. And whatever these things are remains to be seen. There it is. You know what? I'll let everyone have a closer look at some of this footage again. I'll run it one more time. There was actually more things I wanted to add. Anyone who goes and gets tools that supposedly tracks satellites, Stellarium is one of them. What you will quickly find out is what I found out. I spent all this time like waiting for transits in Stellarium, and then I'd go out there and I'd be sitting and I'd say, well, wait a minute, there was supposed to be a transit at this time or that, and it would never happen. So I started looking into things. The first thing that you're going to be told about any of the satellite tracking things is they're not accurate. And not are they just not a little accurate, they're a lot not accurate. To the point where back in the day when I was still assuming that those tools were correct and that I was filming satellites, I would accept anything that was within 10 or 15 minutes of the reported time from the tool. 10 or 15 minutes. And if the trajectory was close, well, that's all nonsense when you begin to logically break it down. If the trajectory is even slightly, even a fraction of a degree off, over time, it's going to put that satellite in a totally different area if those maps were correct to begin with. You can look up that they are based on, oh shoot, I've forgotten the name of it, but it has to do with the Air Force tracking place there in the mountain. That's the Stellarium claim, but all of them. It's a bit like the GPS. We used to be told, oh, your GPS can't be that accurate. It's so many thousands of feet off because we don't want anyone to get that accurate information. Well, now look at us. That was obviously nonsense because every car with GPS is told in another, 30 feet, turn left. So now your GPS is right on the money. You can see the nonsense that is built into these things by comparing it to other things. But to get back to satellites, I've never filmed anything that looks like I would expect a satellite to look. I've filmed some things that were a bit fuzzy, and if you stretched your imagination, you could kind of say, well, maybe that is a satellite with one wing or something like that, but only a couple, and they're not in very good focus. As the equipment got better, all those black dots we were filming came into perfect focus, and I would also mention, anyone who wants to do this, you should always set the depth of field on your camera so that everything is in focus, not only from the moon, but as far back away from the moon as you can possibly get. I suppose you might want to do it the other way, where anything too much closer than the moon is out of focus. If you're a genius with cameras, you might be able to start to judge distance of these objects. But there it is, man. Satellites don't exist as they're described. I've said many times rockets are not going to space. If you folks have an open mind and you challenge these things, you'll come to understand what's being said here. There it is, man. Cheers.
If you take a step back and look at the Earth, that sucker is round as you're going to get. So it's not actually a sphere. It's like pear-shaped. Pear-shaped.
Is a sphere. So people have known that the Earth is spherical for thousands of years. It's not okay to say that the Earth is flat. This is some sort of strange denial. I don't know where it comes from. And it's something where I keep getting this question. We really need to put this question to bed because we've known the Earth is a sphere for a long time.
Look at pictures from space, where you see the Earth as a sphere. Those pictures are not fake. The Earth isn't quite a sphere. It's a little, its spin is a little stretched it, made it slightly oblate. The Earth is a sphere, but the Earth isn't quite a sphere. That just makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit, bullshit, bullshit.
I'm skeptical. I'm very skeptical, but I have an open mind. You see, I'm pretty unique in the respect that I actually will challenge my own belief system, challenge my own worldview, and I'm not afraid to do that. Many Americans are. They just have gut, instinctual, emotional responses, and if it doesn't go with their familiar narrative of how they think the world's supposed to work, they ridicule, they laugh, they engage themselves in groupthink. They are afraid to question their current reality.
When we realize that we've been lied to about everything when it comes to space.
People wonder why I don't trust NASA. That's why I don't trust NASA. Everybody's trying to show you stuff from space and you keep rejecting it. This is why I reject it. These guys are liars.
NASA, we're coming for you. For 60 years, you've been faking space. There are no spheres in the heavens. The experts have devised them in the imagination so it was easier to understand their movements. So what's that mean? Well, it means stars are not distant. Guilty of a cover-up the likes of which has never been seen in human history. Everything, and I mean everything that we were taught about space, about the planets, about the orbits is a hoax. It's a lie. That means our entire idea of the cosmos isn't just wrong, it's very wrong, astronomically wrong. So, any scientists, any physicists out there going to do anything? Or is the scientific community just going to sit there and do nothing? You guys are really just making it harder for the truth to come out by protecting these frauds and the liars that deceived all of us.
Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement.
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually. We only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. The moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to.
And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made from the White House. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you have done.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor and privilege for us to be here.
A journey to another planet, a manned mission to Mars.
I should tell you that the first mission is scheduled to land on Mars on July the 4th, 1997, Independence Day.
We will undertake extended human missions to the moon as early as 2015, with the goal of living and working there for increasingly extended periods of time. Human missions to Mars and to worlds beyond.
But I just have to say, pretty bluntly here. We've been there before. There's a lot more of space to explore and a lot more to learn when we do.
Now, last month, we launched a new spacecraft as part of a re-energized space program that will send American astronauts to Mars.
We will establish a foundation for an eventual mission to Mars and perhaps someday to many worlds beyond. If we dare to dream big, and that's what our country is doing again. We're dreaming big.
You can tell it's real because it looks so fake.
The moon is supposedly 238,000 miles away. It's noticeably much closer. The sun, too. Which is why on a flat Earth the sun is able to set due to perspective. On the flat plane, it's closer, it's smaller, so the further it travels away from you, it appears to go down. It's far enough away to where you can't see the light.
When we have hot spots proving locality, that it can't be 93 million miles away.
We are looking at a very local sun.
If your face is the brilliant sun,
thank you.
And this is Earth, and the moon is over here, the sun is always casting Earth's shadow into space. So the moon occasionally passes through that shadow. And if you see the shape of Earth's shadow on the moon, it is always round. Always round.
One flat disk moving across another flat disk. As the circular shadow moves along the moon, it maintains its circular shape the whole way at the same pace. The moon is not a sphere. In the made-up heliocentric lie, as the shadow moves onto a sphere, it is wrapping around its curve. Starting from the outer edge and moving towards the middle, the shadow takes on the spherical contour and bends upward at its height, then falls backwards in a barrel distorted manner.
We've been programmed and indoctrinated to believe in this round, spinning ball Earth flying through space. If you watch movies, you'll start to notice all the time you're seeing this right in your face. If you think about it, you were shown the globe and taught, before you can even think for yourself or even barely walk, you were taught the globe model. This stuff is imprinted in our minds, and we grow up and it's hard to let go. The definition of a fisheye lens is an ultra-wide-angle lens that produces strong visual distortion to create a wide, panoramic, or hemispherical image.
Whenever you start to tilt it upwards or downwards, that's where you get the curvature distortion. So if you tilt the lens upwards in relationship to the horizon, it's going to kind of curve up and create a bowl type effect. If you tilt it downward, it's going to create a sphere or a kind of an orb type effect.
We can see the curve there, but if that's the curve of the Earth, then it's not very big. Go at the video yourself, have a look for yourself. It's 127,000 feet, and it's a complete. But how we get from that to this curve, I have no idea. I do know it's parallel lens distortion, and they're trying to deceive everybody.
Besides Hollywood movies and TV shows, these wide-angle camera lenses are the only reason you'll ever witness curvature. It's the very reason why most people believe they have seen curvature. Because at 120,000 plus feet, there is no curvature when you use a normal lens that's not distorted.
It's 2018. If you don't know that the Earth is not a giant spinning ball, then you are either holding yourself back on purpose or you're a shill.
To all those of you who can't possibly imagine a deception so large, it's time to realize that this isn't a conspiracy anymore. You just need to do the research, and you'll see that we don't and can't live on a spinning ball in space. Period. Math is not reality.
Pilot is flying around the curve of the Earth, then he should be dipping the nose down. Every 5 minutes he should be dipping the nose down to stay around the curve. That's absolute proof that a plane flies over a flat surface rather than a curved one.
Earth doesn't move.
If you look into the experiments to prove that the Earth is spinning, all of them failed.
We have been led to believe that the sun goes down below a horizon as we roll away from it on our spinning ball Earth. When we allow ourselves to question, challenge, or even try to confirm our beliefs with real-life observations, we allow ourselves to see what we really see, even if we cannot understand it. And perhaps we are not supposed to understand it. And that is the point of watching a sun travel away from us, getting smaller and smaller, and becoming a speck on the horizon, beyond the band of convergence. The sun appears to be exactly where we see it.
Forget it, Bart. It's so bright out you can't see anything in the sky except the Fox satellite.
Now, I did not say that little lights can't go across the sky. They exist. I said orbiting metal expensive satellites don't exist. It's a scam on you and on me. Go ahead and try and prove satellites exist. You won't and you can't.
What we're calling satellite communication is landline communication. Most of the world's communication systems are land-based. That is a fact. And that shouldn't be a fact if satellites are real, okay? None of the stuff we use in our world today require the use of a satellite, all right? Keyword, ground-based. I know that this satellite program is straight bogus and that the billions of money that they're getting from us in taxes is being used to turn around and deceive us. Why you keep building these towers if we're paying for satellites? Any way they could exist is to hover above a certain height above the flat plane Earth and they would be stationary.
Captain thinks the world is around, see? But we all know it's a flat, right?
Of course it's flat. Sure, I know the world is flat.
Well, so do I. Everybody knows that.
Good. Then you're on our side. We're gonna take over the boat, throw Columbus in chains, and head for home.
Good idea.
The words Google Flat Earth were found carved into the riverside hill in letters that were 10 feet long.
The world is flat?
The world is flat.
Not debatable, it's flat.
The world is flat.
The earth is flat.
The earth is flat.
The earth is flat.
The earth is flat. The earth is flat.
The world is flat.
The world is flat like a son of a bitch.
You're giving us a lot to process.
True or false? The earth is round.
False.
Can you please explain your answer?
It hasn't been proven.
No, why do you believe you live on a globe? What was your reason?
Yes, because I've been told. That's why, okay.
Prove it without using NASA or any other space agency.
The earth is flat. I don't see any curvature. Curvature. I mean, it's definitely not curving down. If anything, the horizon is rising to meet our eye line.
This is a group of social criminals. These people in the space program,
Nassholes, I call them.
I have a very low tolerance level for stupid bullshit. Every one of those items is provably untrue at one level or another, but we believe them because they're pounded into our heads from the time we're children. That's what they do with that kind of stuff. They put it in the heads of kids. They pound it in there because they know kids are too young to be able to mount a sophisticated argument against these kind of ideas. And so kids, and up to a certain age, by the way, kids are going to believe everything a grown-up tells them, everything. So kids never learn to question things. Nobody questions things in this country anymore. Nobody questions things. Why? People are too fat and happy. People are way too fucking prosperous for their own good. Everyone's got a cell phone that'll make pancakes and rub their balls. Americans have been silenced, bought off and silenced by gizmos and toys. And as a result, no one's ever learned to question things. Kids who want to learn to read are going to learn to read. Much more important to teach children to question what they read.
There's not one authentic picture of this oblate, pear-shaped spinning ball that they claim we live on. I'm sorry to tell you, the only thing that's been to space is your imagination. There is no such thing as space. For thousands of years, all ancient civilizations knew the earth was flat. Until 500 years ago, they took the word of God and they turned it upside down. They said, no, we revolve around the sun. The sun's in the middle, and we're spinning through space and wobbling with the sun at over 600,000 miles per hour. When an organization of pseudoscientists tell me to go completely against what all my senses tell me, that we're stationary and flat, I see it's flat, it's immovable. And I'll go outside when I send a camera up without GoPro or fisheye lens. When I send a balloon up 100,000 feet and it shows the horizon flat, I can't go against that. When I see skylines 60 to 100 miles away, when spherical geometry says they should be behind the curve, all this stuff isn't adding up.
From Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I say, continue to believe pathological liars and you're an idiot.
By the way, how much money is being spent on space? You should emblazon this in your head. Here it goes. This is the pie chart. $330 billion a year is spent on space.
So let's talk a little more about this Buzz Aldrin clip where he subtly admitted that we didn't go to the moon. I've been getting a lot of comments on my last upload of that very clip. People say he was only talking about how we didn't go back to the moon. Let's run the clip.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
To me, Buzz is flat out saying that we didn't go. Buzz, why haven't we gone back to the moon?
Because we didn't go there. We didn't go there. We didn't go there. And that's the way it happened.
Now, this isn't just some sudden realization. This isn't the evidence. Though I'm glad that Buzz came clean, there is much more information available to show us that outer space is not what we are led to believe. Let's go over a timeline that I made. I tried to keep it as simple as possible.
Alright, so in 1915, NACA was founded, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. NACA was established by the federal government, and their mission statement was, "It shall be the duty of the Advisory Committee for Aeronautics to supervise and direct the scientific study of the problems of flight with a view to their practical solution." In 1923, Disney was founded. Walt Disney, of course, grew up in the Demolay, a young boy's version of Masonry. Continuing on, in 1936, JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, was founded, in part by Jack Parsons, an avid follower of Aleister Crowley and a member of his fraternal organization, the OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis. Jack Parsons also hung out with L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of the Church of Scientology, which holds sci-fi-like religious beliefs, including the belief of a galactic dictator named Xenu. Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard both practiced black magic and participated in sex magic rituals together. In 1954, Walt Disney and the father of rocket technology in the United States, Wernher von Braun, meet and make 3 films about space exploration. One was called Man in Space.
Here to introduce you to this new series is Walt Disney.
In our modern world, everywhere we look, we see the influence science has upon our daily lives. Discoveries that were miracles a few short years ago are accepted as commonplace today. Many of the things that seem impossible now will become realities tomorrow.
Just a couple years later, in 1958, NACA is transformed into NASA, and the space program begins with projects like Mercury and Gemini. In 1966, filmmaker Stanley Kubrick meets with NASA employees as well as Arthur C. Clarke. Pretty damning photograph. 3 years before the first moon landing, Kubrick just happens to be running with NASA and a well-known author of science fiction books, who also predicted satellites in 1945. Arthur C. Clarke's work includes Childhood's End, which was made into a 3-part series on Sci-Fi Channel in 2015. Very interesting series with so-called aliens, but they look like the epitome of Satan, and they come to usher in the new golden age for humanity.
There is no need to be afraid.
In 1968, Arthur C. Clarke wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey. It was developed concurrently with Stanley Kubrick's film version. Fun fact, between 1968, when the movie was made, and 2001, when the movie takes place, that is exactly 33 years. They did the exact same thing with 9/11. The Twin Towers began construction in 1968, and they were knocked down in 2001, exactly 33 years later. Anyway, this not only served as practice for Stanley Kubrick, as he was given pointers on how space should be portrayed by Arthur C. Clarke, but this was also mental conditioning for the masses. 2001: A Space Odyssey was the #1 movie in the box office in 1968. And 1 year later, in 1969, Apollo 11 claims to land men on the moon for the first time. President Richard Nixon called Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin from the White House to congratulate them.
Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made from the White House. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you have done.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor and privilege for us to be here.
Meanwhile, I can't get cell phone service in the mountains here in Colorado. Later on in the same year, Apollo 12 lands men on the moon for the second time. Then in 1971, both Apollo 14 and 15 successfully land men on the moon. In 1972, both Apollo 16 and 17 also successfully land men on the moon. So that's 6 successful moon landings between 1969 and 1972. And it just suddenly stops there. In 1981, Masonic Television, aka MTV, begins, starting right off with the usage of Apollo footage and continuing to use the Apollo program as their theme to further condition the masses on a wide scale, especially the younger generation. Make the Apollo missions cool and hip. Apollo missions, they're the hip thing to do. If MTV wasn't ran out of a Masonic temple, it wouldn't be such a dead giveaway, but they do, and it so happens that many NASA astronauts and employees are Freemasons. Now it's 2018, and nothing has happened since 1972. It's been just over 45 years, and that's a lot of time to be stagnant after 6 back-to-back moon landings. Get this, not only did NASA lose the telemetry data for all the moon landings, but NASA now claims that they lost the technology that got them to the moon in the first place.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
This is why we can't go past low Earth orbit, according to them.
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on Space Station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit.
Early in the next decade, a set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
And this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit.
But I have a hunch as to why we can't leave low Earth orbit. Dome, da dome, dome. Dome, 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 dome. Yeah, so they have conceived this idea of a layer of radiation that acts as an impenetrable barrier. It's called the Van Allen radiation belt, and it's code for the firmament. Another thing is that this radiation belt was present for the Apollo missions, so how did they manage to make it through? Let's ask Apollo astronaut Alan Bean.
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No. Now, I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did.
Beginning at an altitude of 1,000 miles and extending an additional 25,000 miles, lay lethal bands of radiation called the Van Allen radiation belts. Every space mission in history with humans on board, from both the United States and Soviet Union, from the first in 1961 to the present, has been well below this deadly radiation field. Mercury, Gemini, Soyuz, Skylab, the Space Shuttle, all maintained altitudes well below 1,000 miles. All except Apollo.
I don't know the distance to the Van Allen radiation belt. And if we did, it wasn't a problem. If we were going to encounter it, then we would have had to build the spacecraft and the spacesuit to not give humans a problem. You don't just build something and hope it works. You study to see what the threats are, the environment is, and then you say, how thick do I have to make the metal on the spacecraft so that going through this kind of radiation or these kind of meteoroids, it won't get hurt. And so then we build it that way.
The belts are 1,000 miles to 25,000 miles above the Earth.
Then we went right out through them.
No effects on your cells?
Didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation.
So you see, Team Apollo didn't know about this deadly radiation belt that would have killed them, so they weren't affected by it. Another interesting aspect of space travel is that it's not possible because thrust and combustion are not viable in a vacuum. Let's review a couple of experiments in a vacuum chamber that prove what I am talking about. First experiment, thrust in a vacuum.
You see when I turn the fan on, it blows the feather all over the place. This is, of course, at atmospheric pressure right now. So since we're at Martian air pressure, let's unplug the vacuum pump and let's turn on this fan. And place your bets as to what's going to happen to this feather. Now the fan's only going to produce maybe 10 miles per hour worth of wind. On the surface of Mars, the fastest recorded wind speed is about 70 miles an hour. But let's say the superstorm in The Martian had wind speeds of 200 miles an hour, 20 times what we have here. To compensate for that, I imagine the feather is about 20 times easier to push over than a spaceship. So let's see what happens. Okay, fans on. And the feather's not moving. In fact, let's zoom in on that.
Thrust does not work in a vacuum, and thrust would be needed to traverse outer space. Second experiment, combustion in a vacuum.
This is a mixture of sugar, potassium nitrate, and iron oxide. This is used in amateur rockets because the ingredients are readily available and the amount of thrust it produces is quite high. So let's light this on fire and see how it does. So this is in Earth atmosphere. As you can see, it burns rather rapidly, producing a little bit of thrust even. As you can see towards the end, it moved it around. So now let's try it inside of a vacuum. No ignition. That's interesting.
Combustion does not work in a vacuum. This is a very big deal. Space travel falls on its face and breaks it, then dies with these two vacuum chamber experiments. Thanks, Cody's Lab. Outer space is an occultist dream. In the same way that Jack Parsons was obsessed with magic, so too was Walt Disney. You can see it throughout his work with the likes of Fantasia, and you can still see it to this day with how they advertise for Disney.
With Disney innovation and magic behind them, Disney DVDs are breathtaking, fun, interactive. A world filled with magical entertainment awaits you. The magic is at your fingertips. Disney DVD. Pure digital magic.
Welcome to a whole new world of Disney magic. Pure digital magic.
The magic of Disney this, the magic of Disney that, the Magic Kingdom. They even have a Disney cruise ship called Magic. And just like Jack Parsons, Walt Disney was fascinated by rockets. Which in the occult circles are modern-day obelisks. Obelisks are erected all over the Earth plane, and they symbolize domination, power, and political authority. The word obelisk translates to Baal's shaft, Baal as in the god or lord. Therefore, an obelisk is a penis. Speaking of penises, in the movie Toy Story, Woody and Buzz come into contact with references to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. You can see it here on the carpet. It's the same carpet from The Shining, and they did this on purpose. There's a reference to room 237 when Woody is using the computer. Another one on the garbage truck license plate. And another on the cameras in the daycare center. This one even says Overlook, the hotel that The Shining took place in. The Shining was Stanley Kubrick's way of saying that he filmed the moon landings. In the movie, there are references to Tang, the drink that the astronauts took to the moon.
Astronauts to the moon.
Little Danny wearing an Apollo 11 sweater and heading for room 237. Another funny thing about Toy Story is that Tom Hanks plays Woody, and the year it came out is the same year that Apollo 13 came out, with Tom Hanks as the lead. And Tom Hanks also was the executive producer, meaning that he was the main producer behind a project for a 1998 miniseries called From the Earth to the Moon. It's pretty clear that Disney and NASA are connected.
Buzz, I can't believe you were actually in space.
Yeah.
It's true. I was the first space ranger to visit the International Space Station.
Way to go, Buzzarino.
Let me show you.
It was a fantastic program between NASA and Disney to send Buzz up and did a tremendous education program, you know, for children all over the world, and I was so proud.
So when you're looking at this timeline, this is the timeline of deception with the space programs of the world, pretending like outer space is a real thing. And you can add in 1928, Richard E. Byrd started exploring Antarctica. And he explored it for years and years and years. And in 1956 was his last expedition to Antarctica. So we can add those two things to the timeline. And just 3 years after Richard Byrd's last expedition to Antarctica, the Antarctic Treaty was established in 1959, just 1 year after NASA was founded. So when you really look at this and pay attention to all this stuff as a whole, you can see that we're being lied to. It seems that they have found the limitations for how far we can travel on this Earth plane and how high we can go in the sky. But don't just take my word for it. I want you to research this. Whether you believe me or you don't believe me, research it for yourself. It becomes very clear that something is going on with the establishment of the Antarctic Treaty right around the time NASA was founded to gatekeep space. It's all there. Just do your own research. Anyway, that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. I'm gone.
Trouble in space this morning as the International Space Crew attempted a spacewalk outside the station. Here's a live look at the astronauts. Well, I don't believe... I don't think those are astronauts. Yeah,
Where's their spacesuit?
My question is, through your career and your writing and your acting, you've inspired so many people to enter the sciences. How do you balance science with science fiction? They're both the same.
One thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth.
One thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth.
It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Wow, Neil Armstrong. Hey, wait a minute. You're supposed to be on the moon. I just saw it on TV.
Oh, there's a tape delay and with all solar winds.
She always loved the pictures.
It's an old federal textbook. We've replaced them with the corrected versions.
Corrected.
Explaining how the Apollo missions were fake.
Folks, it's an honor for me to be working in this studio. This is the very sound stage where we faked the moon landing. And the JFK assassination. No, I'm sorry, this is where we planned the JFK assassination.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
poke fun at you globetards. I call you curveballers. But you got to do your own thinking. Cognitive dissonance, if you keep an open mind and think about it logically, here is Perth. This is Santorini. Or no, this is Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm sorry. Perth. Now look here. Perth, Johannesburg. And then I believe here in a little bit I'll show you Santorini, Greece, and Israel. And it's 180. So that means the moon has to be like right there. Right in between those two places that they show you. And then when you think of the moon being right there, real close to the earth, not 250,000 miles in outer space, but close and right above, in between Santorini, Greece, and Israel, where I'll later show you in the observatory, and then Johannesburg and Perth. Makes perfect sense why it's upside down. And see, what you're commonly told about it being upside down is because it's south of the equator. But these are both south of the equator, so it should be the same. As you can see, totally different. Now you see, curveball, wake up before you burn up. As you can see, curveball, there's Johannesburg, South Africa, on your ball Earth. Okay? Now we know where that's at. Okay, Santorini, Greece, on your curveball Earth. So we know where our location is. Get a good idea of where we're coming from here, curveball. South Africa, just below it, below the equator. Correlate these in your mind, because you've got Santorini, and then again we're going to have a view from over here in Israel, Middle East. I'll go back over here to Israel. And as I was telling you earlier, if I was correct, if that was Santorini and Israel, the moon has to be directly in between them if it was completely 180. You know what I'm saying? Again, it can't be 250,000 miles away if it was 180 degrees opposite of what you were seeing in the sky. Keep that in mind. Down here was Johannesburg. That's very odd to me that time and date live, they've got all these different camera shots from all different locations on the plane, not a planet, but they don't show you. They'll click from one to another real quick. So I paused it in my other video where they actually had it all up on the screen so that I can go into detail and show you where this is at so you can get an idea. You see that? Right there is this crater right here. This is supposedly taken from South Africa. These fellows, I don't know, I'll have to check, find out exactly where they're at. But look at Perth. We're still below the equator on the ball, so why is it 180 from these other places? This other place is south of the equator. You would expect that here in Greece, right? Because it's in the northern half of the hemisphere, so to speak, right? See why it'd be upside down? Because it's above the equator. Now let's roll this footage a little bit here. See how quickly they moved it? And they don't show you what they got here. Johannesburg 2, Santorini 2, Santorini. I mean, come on. They don't want you to see. It's obvious. So this is Santorini again, and see where it's at? This is from Santorini, Greece. You see the angle of it. This one here, I believe, is Johannesburg or Perth, Australia. You'll see, they'll show you the, see Johannesburg, South Africa right there. You'll see the angle. Now, figure how that could happen on the globe. It's impossible. Looking up at the sky from a flat, you would see it change like that. Makes perfect sense. It makes no sense on a ball Earth. Why would the shadow be like that? You see, it's over here in the northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. That big crater's over on the top left, so it's rotated. You watch as they show you from different perspectives. The total eclipse will start in 19 minutes. Just a little part of what I call truth in plain sight. They don't even hide it from you. See from Perth? It's lit down here on the bottom from Perth. This is still in the southern hemisphere, see? So why would it be like that? Think about it. You don't think critically. It's like they said in the Truman Show. People believe what they're presented with. They don't question their reality. If you question your reality, this makes absolutely no sense if the Earth is a ball. Why it would look like this. It makes perfect sense if it's rotating above us on a flat plane. You're looking at it from different places on the Earth. You can see it at a different angle. They don't even try to hide it. They're showing it to you in real time, what it looks like. Again, curveball. This is from all south of the equator, what you're looking at here. So it should be the same. Because the ball earthers say, well, from the northern hemisphere, it's rotated. So when you go to the southern hemisphere, this is, we showed you earlier on the Google Earth, Johannesburg, and now Perth, Australia. It should be the same. It should not be rotated like this. That tells you you're on a plane and this thing is close and it's orbiting above your head. This really smart guy is going to tell everybody what to think while they're watching this. There they go. They're doing propaganda. How this can happen. So this makes absolutely no sense. If you critically think about it, it makes no sense. So what I'm saying is, if you're on this ball, and you're right here in the dark side, I guess in Santorini, Greece, and you're looking at it, oh, okay. Why is it not like this in real life? Why is it totally 180? The dark line is coming this way. It's not going that way. Okay? And then why would it be if you're over here looking at it, it's 180 degrees from what it would look like if it's there? Think about that. Makes no sense. What they're telling you makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense. You have to question that. Now, where's this one from? Perth, Australia. It's almost upside down now. It's very bright, but you can still see the craters. You won't see that one little dark one, but it's the same side. It's not like you're looking at a different side of the moon. Just from your perspective, see? It's almost 180 degrees from what it looks like in Greece, in Perth, Australia. And then where's this one from? They're showing Perth and then Greece in the big sea. You have to question that. It's so bright in Perth you can't see this crater, but it would be about right here. But if I'm filming this at high noon in Colorado, and this is Perth, why wouldn't this side be lit up? Because the sun is over here on the east. See? Makes no sense on a ball. But you have to question that. You have to question what you're seeing. Because Perth is far west and south of my location in Colorado. So if it's high noon, then how's it getting its light from the bottom south? The sun reflecting the sunlight should be over here or should be lit, like it is up here. See, it makes no sense. But it's not a ball. That's how you know. These are signs for you. This is knowledge that is increased in the last days because people will go to and fro. You get perspectives from all over the earth, but nobody's critically thinking about what they're seeing and why they're seeing what they're seeing. This makes no sense on a ball. You understand that if you question. You won't question. It goes against that schooling that we've all been taught. Can't contradict your schooling. Just going to step through here so you can see how it's happening. Other one up there. It would show one getting it, like they showed there for a minute and then quickly cut it from South Africa. Hopefully they'll make another mistake and put them back up on the screen so that we can see it. But then, this is all for a person that has eyes to see and ears to hear. If you want to let someone do your critically thinking for you, and be told, oh, this guy's an astrophysicist. I mean, you know, he's going to tell me what to think. These people are really smart. They work at timeanddate.com. What's going on? I'll let them explain what I'm seeing. This one's from Johannesburg, South Africa. And then this one's from Perth. And, as you can see, the crater. See in South Africa. See here in Perth. The crazy thing is, this is all supposedly from South America, from the south of the equator. So it should be the same perspective, but it's not. You can see clearly that little crater is up here at the 11 o'clock position, and here, again in Perth, all in South America, or south of the equator. This is South America. Here's Australia, west coast of Australia. Look here, it's at the 7 o'clock position. And then again, this here, it's at the 1 o'clock position, and this is in Greece. See that? Yeah, up here, and Australia, it's down here. Okay, yeah, south of the equator. No, this is south of the equator too, and look at it. It's up here in the north. Again, let's go full screen on this one here, so we can prove to you this fella. Perfectly positioned in South unless they're lying, right? Curveball, is that what you're going to say? Oh, them guys is lying. They're lying. Yeah, somebody's lying. But more importantly, the people in the Truman Show that don't want to critically think just accept the world with which they're presented. They don't question it. They don't question Masons on the fake moon landing. All that's real. It's a ball. They told me. Question everything and hold fast to that which is true. That's what Jesus told you to do, curveball. This here, I believe, is in an observatory at Al Sadim Astronomy Observatory in the Abu Dhabi UAE. As you can see, where we're at here, got a little crater. It's turned over here. Right, here's that big crater that we see up here on the north on this one. This one again is up in Greece, but it's too zoomed out, you can't see. And again, you see how this is rotated. I don't know exactly where this is. Nothing going to tell us. This is in Greece. You can see how it's rotated. It's over here now in Greece. So we're going to move up a little bit so we can keep that in our screenshot. All right. Again, let's watch the footage. Let's see where the Earth shadow starts coming off all these various locations of our moon, our ball moon, from different perspectives, right? We're getting some action. They've switched the view down here. Not where it's from, but we're back here in the UAE, Saudi Arabia. Again, northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, both of them, southern hemisphere. This is South Africa. So why would it be? Oh no, I'm sorry, I think they're probably still in Santorini, Greece on this one, yeah. Santorini, Greece, Johannesburg, South Africa. This one here is in Greece. This one here, south of Saudi Arabia. So why is it that you just change your position on the ball Earth, not even considering the equator no more, just different spots on the ball, and you get all these different orientations of the moon? Remember, it's supposed to be 250,000 miles out. Now, where's this one? Let's switch locations again. Just going to want to slow down because we're trying to show you some truth here. I know this is going to really warp your brain here. This is the Netherlands right here. Why are we seeing it coming off different angles? We're all on the ball, right? I don't know where they've changed this view to. Right here. No idea where this is coming from. Change the view. Going all different places now. So why would it move, curveball? You have no answer for that. Because they're all looking at it. This is international somewhere, I don't know. So where exactly is this one from? It just says South Africa. Again, curveball. This is in South Africa. This is in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm not sure on the location, but you can see it's a different perspective. This one here is the Netherlands, and this one here is the UAE. Again, curveball. Why? If you're on a ball, the only difference should be north or south of the equator, not one side of, Saudi Arabia and directly north in the Netherlands. Shouldn't be, changed that much. So again, all in just this area, they're seeing all these different angles of the moon. which means it must be right here in reality, and it must be very close. You couldn't turn it that many different angles in just those small views. Again, this is the equator, right? So this is north of the equator, this is north of the equator, and these two are south. You burn up. Let's go over this one more time, curveball. I've got them both up here. This one here, I believe, is from Israel. This here from Greece. This here from the Netherlands. This here from South Africa somewhere. This one here, again, this was from the Netherlands. This one here, the South Africa, right? But what we got in this picture is Perth, okay? And this here is that AUE or UAE, south of Saudi Arabia, a little country. Now that you can look at all these at the same time, you got to wonder, Greece, Israel, the moon's got to be going right between those two places for it to be reversed. This is all in the northern hemisphere. Look at it in relation to the Netherlands, and then South Africa. Look at Perth. That's south of the equator. It's 180 from that. So again, must be in between these two. Can't be 250,000 miles out in space. It wouldn't do that. You moving a mere 10,000 miles on the ball Earth. It should not look that way. But this is information for people that have real eyes to discover the real lies that they show you. They put it right in your face, but then they put these so-called really smart people and all these stupid-ass graphics to try and lull you to sleep so you don't critically think about what you're seeing. There's no way you can get all these different angles of this eclipse from such a short movement on the plane. It would never happen on a ball. It's impossible. That is your proof, curveball. Finally, you can see the light. Or you'll just stay in darkness and take pleasure in unrighteousness and lies.
It is not my intent to beat a dead horse here, curveball, but I do want to stress the importance of this information that I'm sharing with you here, showing that the moon must be very close. Here is the Burkett Astronomical Observatory, where we showed you in the video. It's a ruler. Okay, so we see that. What we want to do, I did this before, and it's 621 miles from there to Santorini, Greece. See that? 628 miles. So for the moon to have done a 180 in 628 miles, that means it had to pass between these 2 points. There's no getting around it. It can't be 5 degrees off the ecliptic at 250,000 miles out in space. It would not flip. It should only flip if you're below the equator. Okay, Lucy. Got some splaining to do, Lucy. I mean, Lucifer. Look here, there's the equator. Again, the scientific explanation for why it's upside down is you're south of the equator. We're talking about Santorini, Greece, and this observatory in Israel, 620 miles apart. The moon is 180 degrees, meaning it has to be close. And it has to be in between these two for that to happen. But science and your so-called gravity would equate the equator with the midline of the galactic plane. And we all know they state the moon goes 5 degrees below, 5 degrees above the galactic plane, or the equator, 250,000 miles out here in space. So they should have all been looking in the similar direction to see the moon, and it should appear the same in both locations, because they're both above the Tropic of Cancer, nowhere near one being above or below the equator. Wake up before you burn up, curveball. Last warning.